Hashem Svasai Tivtach Upiyagitil Sacha. We're now going to study Megillat Esther. As an introduction to Megillat Esther, there are a few very important things to highlight. The first is that Megillat Esther was written by the Anshe Knesset Hagdola. The Anshe Knesset Hagdola were actually not just specific people, but rather generations of people that began during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. And so they compiled this. Now, when they compiled the story, it's actually Esther and Mordechai who asked to please be included in the annals of history. And at first, they weren't going to put her in. And then ultimately, they decided that it was a good idea. Now, first they said, no, we can't put it in because if we put in the story about the Goyim are going to, they're going to be jealous because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able beautifully to save us. But ultimately, it's just like we have many Sfarim are Nichtav, Ladoros, they're there so that we can learn the lesson and important messages. So what is unique about Megillat Esther? So first of all, historically speaking, when did Megillat Esther take place? So there's actually a machlokas. Most, including Rashi, say that it took place, well, first, the Jews were able to, they were given permission after the Chorban Beis Hamikdash. They were given permission by Koresh to be able to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And unfortunately, only 42,000 people returned to Eretz Yisrael. The rest were happy in Golus, and they didn't go back. And then there was a stopping for around 18 years, Achashverosh, and they were not able to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And it was Haman who actually was convincing Achashverosh that the prophecy that was told about the Jews that after 70 years, Yirmiyahu prophesied that something good that they would start to come about and they would start to rebuild. So Haman convinced Achashverosh that, no, you know what, these Jews, they don't do mitzvahs anymore. They are the fallen from grace nation. And just like what had happened with Belshazzar, that remember he took the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash, and he thought that he was in the clear, and he ultimately was wrong, and the people that got punished for taking the kelim in the first Beis Hamikdash, Achashverosh takes out the kelim in the beginning, in the Seudah, in the beginning, and so why isn't he punished? And the answer really has to do with the fact that Achashverosh is ultimately going to be the father of Daryavish. He and Esther have Daryavish, and Daryavish is going to be good. And so for that reason, he's left alive. But they were the fallen out of grace nation, and Achashverosh then believes that, you know what, I could take the kelim out, I can stop what's going on. These people are no longer the golden child, and so we don't have to be worried. Now, interestingly, if that's the case, then we have the other understanding is that this story happened after we actually had the second Beis Hamikdash. And we've mentioned that Haggai, describes how that first generation who had seen the original Beis Hamikdash number 1, was crying when they saw Beis Hamikdash number 2, because the Beis Hamikdash number 2 was so small, and it even had the Shushan wall for all the donations that were made by the people in Galus and Shushan. But the sadness that the Beis Hamikdash must have felt when the people were doing, having parties in Shushan, and not even mentioning, there's no mention of the Beis Hamikdash, suggests that the people were just, happy in Gullus, and they were not at all interested, and it's an unfortunate thing. And that, the story takes on a whole different twist when you think about that. The story of Purim was happening, and they were joyful and making parties in Gullus when we had the opportunity and we had the Beis Hamikdash. And all of us who live in Gullus, where no one in glass houses should throw stones. But so either it happened before they were able to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, but it does highlight that there were so many people in Shushan, because most of the Jews did not tried to go back to Eretz Yisrael, or that it happened afterwards. And again, people were very steeped in Gullus and being happy where they were. Ultimately, there are some very interesting things about this Megillah. First of all, there's no mention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that really leads us to the fundamental understanding of what are we supposed to take, what's our takeaway from Megillah Esther. So first of all, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not mentioned and that we have the pasuk. Where do we know that Esther min Torah minayin? Where is it that we know that Esther is from the Torah? Because of the pasuk Anochi Haster Aster. And so we have the pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hides his face. And so the idea of this story is the idea of us having to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be it in Gullus, be it when we're not face to face with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have to find Hashem. We have to have a love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is going to be not so obvious. It's not so obvious in times of difficulty. It's certainly not so obvious in times of Gullus. And so the idea is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, remember, when he gave us the Torah, he put over us a har gigis. He put a mountain over our head, so we had to accept the Torah. What does that even mean? So the idea being is that when Hashem gave us the Torah, what he did was he revealed himself to us. And when he did that, it was obvious that, of course, we saw the clarity, as we've been mentioning. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the Tovara, the Da'as of Tovara. But here, when it came to Matan Torah, Hashem's like, you know what? I'm going to show you exactly what I'm all about. I'm going to give you the true knowledge. I'm giving you a blueprint of what it's like, as me, from my perspective. And so, of course, we say Na'aseh B'Nishma. It was kind of that situation where if you know that if you make one wrong turn, you're going to get struck by lightning, you don't make a wrong turn. So, in this case, however, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, okay, so that's one kind of way that you can serve me, but this is not it. This is all the rest of the times when I'm not going to be so clear to you, and you have to find me in your life. And that's a hard find. But so that's why the name of Hashem isn't mentioned, because perhaps it's really suggesting that we have to put in the name of Hashem into our lives. And miracles happen, good, bad, the difficulty, and there are several. I think there are Mefarshim who count over 100 coincidences, kind of in quotes, that just happen, suggesting, of course it's not. It's everything is Yad Hashem. And that idea is a very strong idea, is that you have to find Yad Hashem in your life. And when you're able to do that, that's the true level of connection that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And sometimes he makes it very easy for us to find, but oftentimes he doesn't. And it's for us to look deeper, right? To legalot, from the word Megillah. What is the Megillah? Like to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu within something that is a lot more challenging to reveal. And so for that reason, we have this Megillah that is chiyuv, actually. It is the only one that we have to read twice. We hear it in shul, L'kro Megillah. Why? Because that ultimate message of finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to legalos es HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, is a fundamental tenet of our belief system. And so it is something that is going to withstand, the test of time, and it is something that is really fundamental. And so we're going to read it together. We're going to understand it, try to get some from deeper messages. Just one little final, interesting point is that it's possible. First of all, there are several words that are in Persian, and I think there are 60 of them. And again, there's no one, there's not Hashem, but this other idea of who is the only Melech, that is Achashverosh. And perhaps when the people were writing it, so some say that it was written, like we said, a long time away from when it actually happened. How do we know that? Because there's a lot of introductions to things, to circumstances, to Achashverosh. If you were alive during the time of Achashverosh, you don't need to know. No one needs to know some of the important monarchs because you just know them. And so in this case, perhaps it was written, a long time away, or it was actually written in the time of Achashverosh. And the things that are highlighted are, just in case Achashverosh, God forbid, remember, he stopped, when Esther asked him, when he said, "Oh, Esther, I'll give you ad chatzia malchus, I'll give you up to half the kingdom. I won't let you rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, but I'll give you anything else that you're asking for." And so clearly there's this level of anti-Semitic doctrine that's permeating in his society. And if that's the case, then you have to be very careful as to how you write what you write, just in case somebody looks it over, somebody sees it. It has to really go through that process because there is a chance that at the end of the process, there will be difficulty for the Jews as a result. And so this Hamelech, we could interpret it as, must be HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to, on a hidden level, on a surface level, to the Goyim, it's like, Hamelech, okay, so nice. I like the reference of, Achashverosh, it must be Achashverosh. We who understand the story understand that he was an ineffectual king who didn't make any real sound decisions. And didn't really change anything. He was kind of went with whatever it was that he was presented with. But if you take it on a pro Achashverosh level, it could look like he is the Melech and he did a great job and he conducted himself and really was involved in a lot of spectacular change. And so for that reason, this is a special Megillah. It is a Megillah that we will delve into, understand some of its concepts, and whether you think about it as being before or after or during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, it is definitely a significant piece, knowing that this is happening in Galus, not in Eretz Yisrael, and at a time where for a while, Jews were able to go back, and it begs the question, how much have we evolved? The Jews were able to go back then and didn't. Did they not learn their lesson, or where did they find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on a deeper level? And so, without further ado, Megillas Esther.